been a while since our last Rangers roundup, which was in November, would you believe? So it's been a significant number of matches that we've played since then. In fact, it's 24 games. We've had 10 wins, five draws, and nine.
It's half the season.
It is. It is.
Technically, yeah.
If my maths is right, and I don't necessarily think it is, but this translates to a win ratio of 44% and a non-lose ratio, if we're going to go like that, of 62%. Um, and our championship points, we've got 45 out of 72. We are 15th. Sorry, we've got 35 points out of 72, possible 72. And that equates to 15th in the table now on an overall total of 45 points. So let's delve into those figures, gentlemen. They're obviously an improvement upon those we reviewed in the last Rangers roundup in dismal November. But just how good are they, Matt?
Um, it was sort of the turning point the last time we finished. Now the season's a completely different reflection now. A lot of greens, which is good to see. Um, Marty changed his ways in terms of our playing style, a bit more pragmatic at the time, and we were just getting results to pull us out the mire, really, where we were. When that game came along, it was sort of the turning point. We could have lost that game quite easily. I remember a refereeing decision that was quite controversial at the time, but we managed to get a point out of that. And then the win against Cardiff at the time, Marty sort of had to win that. There were questions of him maybe getting the sack, but that win against Cardiff was a turning point. And then since then, we were on a run where we were losing quite a few games, and yeah, it's been really good to see. Now we're in mid-table, um, with some games to spare, where we try to secure our safety now. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that QPR were one of the best performing sides in the EFL based upon their results at that time for the first 2 months of 2025. Since then, we've had a few stumbles. We've got to admit that. So, Joe, was it unrealistic to expect the squad to maintain that level of performance and results all the way to the end of the season?
Certainly the results part, I think. Um, Simply because the fixture list has thrown up a few quirks this season. If you look at how we've done either side of the winter months, when our performances aren't and results aren't particularly strong, our winnable games have all come in big gluts in the middle of the table, and as we've got closer and closer towards the end of the season, obviously the difficult games have come back round again. So I do think that the results when we played the bigger teams and the better teams in this league earlier in the season were the results there were a fair barometer of the campaign, and that consequently when you play those teams again, even though the results have improved for us during those months between November and February, we on as a team we haven't jumped significantly in terms of necessarily our performances to justify going to places like Middlesbrough, playing Sheffield or play Sheffield United at home and be able to win those games.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I remember us discussing whether we were at a crisis level yet in November, but now we can luxuriate in the glow of some really solid results and performances.
Yeah.
You're right, though, they're intermittent. I mean, certainly when we won against Watford and Norwich, and that draw against Leeds, obviously recently, those results and performances have brought us up from the relegation zone to 15th place, I think it is now, in the Championship. So can we go any higher, Joe? And will we?
No, I think we're at our level, to be honest. I think if I look at the table now and I see Preston are above us on 2 points, I always think Preston are a good test of where you're going to finish in the league. If you ask yourself, are you a better team than Preston North End? If the answer is yes, significantly, you'll have a good season. If your answer is we're about there, then you'll finish around mid-table with them. And if you're poorer, then you're going to go down. You're going to be towards the bottom of the table. And to be honest, I think we're about Preston North End's level. To be honest, I don't look at the teams that are above. I don't look at the teams necessarily that are above them and think they're drastically better. Blackburn, Watford, Millwall, they're not fantastic sides, but I do think they do have a bit more nous than we have, and extra sprinkles of quality. You know, if we aim for 12, so at least we can turn around and say that we finished in the top half of the table. That would be a positive, but I don't really see any run for the playoffs. I mean, 12 points is a lot with 8 left. Um, we've also got to be a little bit wary of the trapdoor on the way down. You know, I know it's only 6 points to Cardiff, 7 to Derby, but Derby have found a bit of form, and although we've got winnable games, if you don't win 2 or 3 of them, when your last two are Burnley and Sunderland, you're going to be a bit worried. But I do think we've got enough to get 6 points between now and the end of the season.
Yeah. I guess my same question to you, Matt, perhaps a little blunter. Are the playoffs just a pipe dream?
Yeah, they were. They were. I think at the time we were 4 points. We were dreaming definitely, but I think I had the mentality of I was just loving where we were. We were winning games. We were playing with confidence, and loving how the team was playing. The whole club was in a really positive place at the time, and but I felt the run of games that we were had coming up. We had Coventry in there as well. Those were good tests. But you can see, especially the games against Coventry and Middlesbrough as well, just recently, you can see the difference in quality, the better attacking options, and um, and you can see we're nowhere near that level yet. Um, and I agree what Joe is saying completely. Preston and QPR in some ways are sort of the predominant championship teams that are sort of finishing mid-table and still have nothing to play for the last couple of months. But we all know it's QPR. We all know it can get a bit shaky towards the end of the season. And look, we've gone past that period of facing teams who are, shouldn't be in this league, really, Sheffield United and ending that losing run against Leeds, I think, was that tincture of hope that, okay, yeah, I think we're going to be okay. And now we've got a run of games where teams are either just above us or below us, but they are around us, and we've got to try and get points against them. So, yeah, 2-3 wins should be okay. Um, yeah, I definitely agree with Joe.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we struggled in November, really, really struggled. And obviously, everybody was looking at the relegation zone now. Then there was that brief flurry where we were looking at the playoffs in a period of huge optimism, perhaps. Um, I guess the fact that we're having this discussion really at the moment just shows the turnaround we've had since November. Um, Obviously, we've had the fillip of key players coming back, but now it has to be said we're also losing a few. Um, but we're no longer a pushover, and I think that the fair credit to Marti and Xavi for what they've done. They really made sure that in possession, we work well, and when we're away from the ball, we're chasing it. As a team, as a unit, it's a much better position than we were before, and it needs to stay that way. I am still concerned though about the lack of cover at left back and defensive midfield in particular. But we should be proud of this squad. Um, can we make the playoffs? No, I don't think that's possible. Um, if you're going to ask me, I'd love to say that we could make single digits, by which I mean ninth or eighth or whatever, but I don't think that. I'm going to be slightly more optimistic than you two, and we'll come back and look at this maybe at the end of the season. I'm going to go for 12th. Okay, let's venture into more and more subjective analysis, perhaps, than even that. What has prevented us from being a viable candidate for those playoffs, do you reckon, then, Joe?
The way we play, the players we um, it's funny because I listened to a lot of football output recently, and there's been this assessment that the number 10 position has died. And yet I think we're one of the only few teams that still insist on playing with a number 10 in the team. And at home, Ilias Chair's performances were picked up, and we've seen an output from him that we hadn't seen post injury before. But away from home, playing with that number 10 of Chair is just not an option at the minute because it's leaving us too vulnerable in midfield. Um, yeah, I think the way we play, we're quite a direct team,
Yes.
more direct than I think
we expected. Yeah,
typically give a QPR team credit for. People have got memories of 70s, 80s teams where we are quite direct. And I don't think we've got enough players in the middle of the pitch that retain the ball well enough for us to sustain attacks to mean that we can dominate games in a way that would theoretically push us up the division. So I do think the way we play is a problem in terms of that. You look at the teams that are playoff sort of ninth, 10th, 11th. There's not really anyone that plays as direct as us. So I do think maybe that's hurting us a little bit. Yeah, and I think personnel, like you say, left back, we've had problems. Ken Powell's a bit complacent. There's a little bit of complacency in his game. He knows he's not got a challenger in that position, that we've not got any depth. He knows he's out of contract at the end of the season, and it's not to say that he's coasting, but he's comfortable,
yeah.
and the comfort, means that we're not seeing the Powell that we saw when he first emerged in the team. Um, as much as I love Jimmy Dunn at right back, I do think as well that perhaps a more dynamic attacking right back would aid the team too. At least it would give us, when we attack down that right hand side, Paul Smith is always very, very tight to the touchline. It would give him a little bit of ability to drift a little bit. And yeah, in terms of centre forwards, Frey's good, but again, he's another one I don't think that can play away from home. Bigger pitches where he's asked to do a lot more running. I think he's found out, and it's the lack of options that we've got beyond, say, 11 or 12 players that is undermining us as well.
I can ask the same question to you, Matt. I mean, what do you think's held us back from getting in the playoffs?
Definitely the lack of attacking options off the bench. The way I see it, I think Lloyd is too raw at this level. He's come on a few games as a sub, he's made an impact, but I think the last couple of games we've having to need a goal, I don't know, it's sort of bouncing off him. He's not holding the ball well up enough. Um, and I think he does need a loan like Kelman. Kelman would be possibly a good option for next year if we can keep him. He's been doing well this season for Leyton Orient, and if we can keep him, then he'll be a good option for us next season. But yeah, if you look at the attacking options, I think Sato, he's got a couple of goals now. Um,
Got
but
three.
look at Smith, you look at Frey, you look at Chair. There's just not enough goals in the team, and we've just been relying on set pieces the last couple of weeks. Um, you can see a clear difference in home games. You want to be the dominant team, have possession, and be direct at teams. But away from home, you can clearly see, like, you can look at Middlesbrough, West Brom, away from home. We're waiting for it set piece. And you can see we're taking our time over it and really planning to try and get a goal from that, but it's not sustainable. And I think that's come back to bite us from the results that we've had, especially away from home. So yeah, and I think we also lack a sort of like a number eight, sort of agree on the lines of Joe, like a one that could be that dominant midfielder in midfield on a consistent basis. I look at Matt Grimes, who's gone to commentary now. He's that perfect sort of number eight, experienced number eight in midfield that can just take the game by the scruff of the neck. And look at commentary now in the playoffs now. So yeah, I think those are the sort of things that have sort of stopped our way from a playoff chase.
Yeah, I think you're both right. I think it all stems in a way from not having quality in depth. When you get those injuries coming around, as they inevitably do in every team, whoever you've got sitting there on the bench, that's where you're going to end up either doing really, really well or struggling. And we've got to accept that we don't have the money that that those who come down with the parachute payments they've got to spend, and perhaps even to retain their Premier League players that they had when they came down. So that's a struggle in itself. And you're absolutely right, Matt. I think that, we need to have somebody coming through the middle, threading the balls through, and we don't have that person. And in all fairness, we don't necessarily have that person up front either, who is going to take that ball off them and run with it and score. We're reliant too much on the wings, perhaps. But I'd agree with you on that anyway. And that's why, in a way, it's a real shame that Chair's not there, because that's what you want. You want somebody to with a bit of creativity in the middle to either move it out to the wing or to move it through to Frey or whoever. Anyway, enough of this. Changing the subject slightly, I do feel that we should remind ourselves that some supporters were calling for Marti's head in November, but the board stayed strong and they allowed Marti time to turn around those results. I should add that Marti is now one of the longest serving managers come coaches in the EFL. How crazy has all this been for QPR and the championship in general, Matt?
Yeah, that saying Marty's one of the longest serving managers in the championship just shows you that it's one of the craziest leagues in the world, and I think how our season's gone, it's sums it up really as well. When I was going to see Christian Norrie on behalf of Hoops and Dreams, he had no doubt on his mind that he was going to get rid of him uh, when we was in that bad period. And I knew deep down he was the right man to take us forward. I look back at last season where we were. He came in and he changed the culture. He changed the belief in the fans and the team. And we were getting results to pull away, and we did it in the end. Um, and I had to look back at the championship table at that time. There were so many games left to drag us out where we was. And yeah, I think there was no one else like him to take us out where we was. And he's managed to do that so far. Of course, we need to finish the job with games to spare. But what I believe in Marty uh, is positivity in the way he plays. He always wants to try and win the game with attacking options that we currently have, even though they've not been firing recently. He still wants to go for trying to be defensive, anything like that. So, um, yeah, credit to him what he's done from last season to this season, and yeah, let's hope we can back him in the summer again. I don't know how funds will be. I know with financial fair play, but yeah, we need to try and bolster the attacking options and see if we can get higher next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a rocky road, no doubt about it, with all the injuries and everything. So I guess, Joe, I'm going to ask, is our future success linked to that of Marti Cifuentes?
Um, I think our future success is more linked to the ability to for Ryan Colley and Kieran Morgan to succeed in the team and to be sold on, because I think that's the only way we're going to seriously generate money, which would help Marty. Yeah, I think Marty's done an okay job. I'm not in the camp of Marty enthusiast, but again, I'm not in the camp of Marty anti-Marty. I'm sort of
You're sitting on the fence. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sort of sat in the middle, and I think maybe that's because we've not necessarily seen the kind of football that maybe we'd expect Marty to play, and that he's been a little bit handicapped by the squad that we've got. So perhaps next season or towards the end of this season, if we begin to see an experimentation that sees us play a bit more slicker football, then I'd say yeah, maybe our success is dependent on it. That is dependent on him. But equally, if someone comes in with an offer for him in the summer, and the club opt to take it, I don't think that's a disaster, because I look at League One and I do think there's a couple of managers in League One who are gettable, who could play a more productive way of football that might be better. Maybe Richie Wellens or Michael Skubala would be the two that come to mind. But again, I'm not sitting here and saying that he should go. I just wouldn't put anything off the table at this point, because we're an okay team and we're in an okay position. But if we're looking to progress out of this season, then the jump needs to be significant. And I don't think you're going to get that jump. And I do think that's money. Hence why I think the success of Morgan and Colley are important. And if Marty is committed to playing those players, then I do think he will get success. Because if they succeed, the club will succeed in terms of financial, and then he will be able to succeed in terms of what he can do with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're right in that, and I think we might even see the experiments as we get towards the dead rubber period. I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that
Well,
There's
not
three.
quickly perhaps, but he will experiment, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's three for me in the development and the youth team that I think he's got to put in. I would try. I think you have to put Emerson Sutton in at some point because you cannot have teams like Man City and Arsenal chasing this lad and giving him a
So
new
why?
deal for him to sit still because if they're offering even if they're offering you 1 or 2 million for a kid in your academy, take it because if you're not going to play him, that's 2 million that could buy you two decent players from League One that will benefit your team. And I think he should try Harry Murphy, and I think he should try Fraser Neal as well.
Yeah, yes, not a
Yeah,
bad
good
choice.
shout.
Yeah, I
Good
agree.
shout.
Okay, let's move on to examining the talking of new arrivals and whatever. For the first team squad in January, we had a fair few come in actually. The first I was going to mention is Yang, who's on loan from Spurs after joining from a season competing in the K League. Your thoughts, Matt, on him?
Uh, Bit of a mixed bag. Recently, I think he has struggled physically. Um, he's not a player that doesn't want to play the ball backwards. He wants to be direct, but I think he's found, especially teams like West Brom and Middlesbrough, that they're just too physical for him. And he got hooked off at half against Middlesbrough. I think it was predictable. Um, but when he first started, the Derby game comes to mind. He played with full confidence and he got the assist in that game, which is great play from him. So he started well, but I think he just started to slow down a little bit. Maybe the Championship is starting to find him out a little bit. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we compare him, Joe, with Sato, and it's a reasonable comparison to make, both wingers. Um, do you think he's done reasonably well or well?
I mean, he's a young lad, so I would give him a little bit more patience. He's the type of player that I don't understand why Premier League clubs don't send them out on an 18-month loan or a 2-year loan. Chelsea did it with Thibaut Courtois once to Atletico Madrid, and the second he came back, he was ready for the first team. Um, I think 2-year loans would suit the player better. But for us, it would be an 18-month. You get him in January and he stays with you till the end of next season. Uh, yeah, I think Saito's better off the ball. I don't know whether that's because in the K League he's classed as one of the flair players who can change the game, so there's less emphasis on him needing to come back and defend. But I don't know. I don't watch enough K. I don't watch any K League football, so I wouldn't know. But yeah. I think with the ball, he's got capacity, but like Matthew says, he's out of possession. He's a bit worrying.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, second one I was going to bring up is Harvey Vale, who came to us injured. He's an ex Chelsea academy player who's going to take no part in this season's games, from what I can make out. Attack-minded midfielder. He's been brought in for the future, I guess you would say. So, Joe, difficult to rate him, I suppose, at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a curious one as well, given that
Mm,
you you've jumped in quite early for a lad that only played 20 odd minutes in the Championship for Hull when he was there
yeah,
for a season. And for an attack-minded player, his numbers at Bristol Rovers weren't fantastic either. I've seen a lot of journalists turn around and say he's one of the best players that they've seen at under 21 level, but under 21 level is not first team football. It
no.
might, I'm not necessarily against bringing players in January ready for next season. I would actually be in favour of that because in the position we're in the middle of the table, I do think that's sensible business, and that maybe they've done the same thing with the Brazilian left back as well. They've brought him in 6 months in advance because we can get him to acclimatise, we can get him used to how we're going to play, and I think that could work. Jury's out though, because obviously you've not seen him, you can't make any judgment on him, so we'll see next season, won't we? Back injuries, back injuries are a dangerous one, aren't they? And if
I know, I
you're
know.
picking them up that early, that's
Matt-
I just hope for his sake that that injury can be resolved and he can get himself on the pitch.
Yeah, Matt, you think the same?
Yeah, it was very anticlimactic on transfer deadline day. We were waiting for that announcement, and then we just see it. The first sentence in the confirmation, it was a real letdown because yeah, I think the whole fan base was looking forward to finally a attacking fullback that can back up Powell. But yeah, uh, again, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Hopefully, he's not one of those injury-prone players. I think we just it felt like we persisted with it, and I think Christian Nori is he's really looking to go to the clubs like Chelsea, Tottenham, many London clubs to know the new training ground that we do have. He wants to try and get those young, bright players to acclimatise in London and yeah, try and get our training ground to a good basis where we're growing these young players and see where we can go to try and make it a profit if we can for these players. So um, I think that's a sort of long-term plan. But with Vale, yeah, we have to wait and see once he starts playing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. It was a strange one. I've never heard of it being done before, but perhaps it has, but I've never heard of it. So he is a bit of a gamble. Yeah, can't disagree with that.
If they've not paid a lot of money for him, then it's probably worth a gamble.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're probably right on that as well. Finally, let's have a quick go through. It must surely be a success story. In January, we also had Ronnie Edwards come in on loan from Southampton. Who started playing almost immediately because we needed him. Um, I think he's been a great addition, in my opinion. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, he's been a breath of fresh air really for us in the back line. A defender that can um, sort of like Rob Dickie used to do it, just playing out from the back, just run forward and just for the bravery coming out from the back, he's very comfortable on the ball, and yeah, he's really helped us out a lot, especially in that period where we were winning games. He's been a real great addition for us. The first goal we scored, he was pushing for it games before, and glad he got his first goal for the club. And it's just a real shame that I don't see us having a chance to possibly get him permanently. Southampton going back down, which is obvious.
Ill
They're
as
like 20 points adrift. They
yeah.
were one him back, which is a real shame. But yeah, he's been one of the bright spots this season for us, and yeah, really good to see.
And he wasn't bad in midfield on against Leeds either, was he,
No,
Joe?
he wasn't. He was one
Oh,
of our best players.
what do you think, Joe?
Yeah, it was a sensible bit of business, wasn't it? Because we were short there, and he had the uncertainty over Jimmy Dunn as well. So he's done well. He's done well. Like he's a good player stepping into a team which was stable as well, which I think has helped him. Um, yeah, not really much more to add. He's good football.
So we've reviewed the list of matches that we played. We've then discussed new additions to the squad, talked about where we think we're going to end up at the end of the season. That only leaves two items in our book, dealing with long-term injuries and a quick review of the up-and-coming games. So let's start with the injuries. And again, we'll go through those one by one. Jake Clark-Salter, this seems to be like a recurring theme for me. He's recovering from a series of setbacks. Will we see him back in the squad soon, do you think, Joe?
Um, Worry is if you bring him back in, he'll break down again. To be honest, given that we're probably going to finish mid-table and that he is still under contract and we're unlikely to get any offers for him in the summer, they may as well leave him so he can have some time off, allow his body to recover properly, and then go ahead again for the next season.
Yeah, I think so. Will he make a difference to the squad when he's fit, Matt, do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure he will. On his day, he's a solid player. Quite impressive to watch at times. And yeah, the only problem is he can't be fit for long term. And I agree with Joe 100%. I think there's no point playing him now for chance of him breaking down again. And yeah, give him till August. He should be in good shape for then, and we'll have a good centre back in our hands. If it's not Ronnie Edwards, then he'll be able to step in. He's also solid. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we've got a lone player in Ronnie Edwards that we want to play. He can play. Yeah, let him earn his money. And I agree with you both. I think if Jake comes on probably for 10 minutes here and 10 minutes there, I've got no worries with that at all. That's fine by me. Okay, how about Kader Dembele, who's been out for a few months with knee injury? He's now reached that stage where he's gone from being a sub to actually starting, I think. Didn't he start last one? No, he didn't start last one. He came on. Prior to his injury, we saw glimpses of a tenacious midfielder who moved the ball about really well. As with Jake Clark-Salter, do you believe his availability will greatly add to the squad, Matt?
Yeah, I think now's the chance to show what he's all about for these last games. Yeah, he's come on as a sub, but not really much time to have an impact. He came on for the last, I think, 15 minutes or 20 minutes against Sheffield United, and he sort of played as like a 10 with
Yes.
chairs and as two tens, but it was sort of these tactical options are sort of all over the place. We didn't have like a proper formation to go with, so he was sort of just plucked there and he didn't know where to go. Um, and then the game against Leeds, again, he didn't really have the chance to have a full impact. He had a few nice glimpses here and there, but again, we haven't seen his full ever since his debut at the start of the season. That was the last time he's shown his full potential. But I think now the game's coming up and with Chair being out, possibly out for the rest of the season, and Sato out for I think for 3 games now, is his chance to have his chance to uh, show his impression to Marty. And no doubt he's a talent. Um, and hopefully we'll see that next coming games.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's alluded to not alluded, actually said that Chair being injured, Joe. I mean, this is Dembele's chance, isn't it?
Yeah, you would have thought so. Um, I also think it's Paul Smith's chance as well, because I think Paul Smith would be happier playing on the left-hand side,
Mm.
um, where he played for Leyton Orient, and rather than running down the line and crossing the ball on the right. Um, yeah, I think he's going to have to play him, simply because obviously Sato's red card leaves us a little bit short, and then you're looking at Yang, you're looking at Benny, and I know Benny's had a good month away with Australia, but I'm not sure he'd be thrown in straight away. So yeah, it's a big opportunity for Dembele because you've got 5 or 6 games that are winnable, that you're playing teams that are at our level, and they're the games that you really want to see something from. You want to see indications that there is a player there for next season.
Yeah,
Um,
100% agree with that. Lucas Anderson came back on against Leeds. He's had 2 periods out with injury, the last being a calf injury, if I remember rightly. And he's progressed from sub appearances, as I said, to starting with Leeds. So that he's really at match fitness now, I would have thought. Is he another player whose return would assist us in dead ball plays, Matt?
I'm not too sure, really. I think to most of the QPR fan base, he was a surprise starting against Leeds, but with the injuries that we have, we had to have the extra body in midfield to basically try and cover ourselves against Leeds. But I thought he played at a reasonably good level.
Yeah, he did.
Um, and it was a surprise playing that way. I think at the start of the season, especially, he wasn't great at all. He looked like he lost a bit of pace. I think the injuries that he's had at the club has really stopped him in his tracks, especially the form he had from last season. So no doubt he's a great squad player for us. He probably will be needed for the next couple of weeks with Chair being absent as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the summer, whether he'll stay or not. But yeah, a bit of in the middle for him. Yeah,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where they play him, Joe, won't it? Whether they play him as a replacement for Chair in the middle, or whether they use him actually as a replacement for Sam Field.
yeah, I'd be surprised if he played that deep in the midfield. I do think
Mm.
he can do, I think he can do it. I just English football doesn't necessarily understand that the six is essentially the same as a number 10, just move back one position in the
Exactly.
field.
Yeah.
We've got this idea that all our sixes need to be 6 foot
Yeah, good.
four.
That's
They need to
right.
be built, it needs to be built like Patrick Vieira, and if they're not built like Patrick Vieira, they can't play as a six, which is why we struggle at international level. But that's another point. But yeah, so I've got no queries that Anderson could do that.
Mm.
Um, I expect him to play as a 10 when he does play. To be honest, I think he's a better option than Madsen because
100%.
he can press. There were times against Leeds where we were in 2 banks of 4 and Anderson's playing just in front pressing the two. So I don't mind him doing that role, but I think his days at the club are numbered. And for him, it's just, you know, shop window now. Can I get a club for next season? I think, but I do think he will add to the team. He does add a bit of energy in the midfield. But
He does,
I
and
do think
height.
it might. Yeah, and I think, and he's not bad over set plays as you've said, Brian. But I think it might be a rotation between him and Kieran Morgan between the end of the season. It all depends on the availability of Varane and Field between now and the end.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's move on to Zan Seller, who came good, only to get injured, and must be cursing his luck. He really must be. We may see him in late March coming back in, doing a few substitutions, and then eventually get going in April. Um, so, can you see him getting starting place as it stands, Joe?
As it stands, I think he'll play Frey more. But away from home, I don't think Salah would be the worst option. I don't think he's particularly mobile as well. And I know we mentioned Alfie Lloyd earlier, and I agree with Matt that he is raw. But I think away from home, he's the ideal centre forward because he can move
Okay.
and he gets us up. He can get us up the pitch, even if the ball's bouncing off of him. He does get us up the pitch in a similar way to what Armstrong did the season before. There are questions over his ability, but his dynamism means he's an asset.
Yeah,
Um, for,
his finishings are very similar to
yeah.
Armstrong. Well,
Although to be fair, he took that goal against Millwall was a centre forward was a
that's
very good centre forward.
class. Yeah.
Um, and for that, yeah, I think that away from home that he's the option for Salah. I think if he does get himself back, it's just a case of can he get one goal? Can he get another goal? Can he get a third goal? So it's just one goal at a time for him because I think he's got to prove to himself that he can do it at this level. Um, Otherwise, I think he might be looking for a move as well in the summer.
Matt, do you think it's also a question of belief with Seller as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a real shame that he got injured at the time where he just stopped going. You can see the game against Cardiff once he had that first goal. The way he took that second goal, it felt like okay, now he's got the full confidence up. But I agree with Joe completely. It's now is that point where if he comes back, will he get going again? That's the only problem. His confidence will be not low, but he'll be in that position where okay, if I don't get going here, then he'll go on that run of not scoring goals, and it could be a position where if we do get attacking options in the summer, he may not even get a look in. So that's the only problem we have with Sel at the moment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in fact, uh, I think if Frey works himself, which he is at the moment, a really high work rate, chasing the ball as much as he covers a tremendous amount of distance. I think you've got to have Seller there as a backup to come on when he gets tired. I mean, there's no getting away from it. If you want to keep pressurizing their defense, that's what you've got to do. I don't think he's as good as Frey at handling the ball when it comes upfield, particularly if they run it long. But you can't expect Frey to do 90 minutes of the sheer running he does. It just won't happen. Okay, and we've already discussed Harvey Vale, so I won't sort of go on about him, but he's one that we may see, just may see towards the end of the season come back, and that would be really interesting to see how he fits in, in terms of ball playing and everything else. Okay, so that leaves us with the last one I was going to mention, which is Rayan Colley. Rayan's
Did you
go
did
on.
you want to mention Steve Cook as well?
Do you really? Okay, yeah, yes, we should mention Steve, I suppose. You're right, that's true. Do you reckon he'll be here next season?
I think Steve Cook could retire at the end of the season. The net If he doesn't get a contract with us, I think it's possible, just because of the nature of that injury, the injury on the sole of your foot. If he's in a position where he's getting bone onto the sole of the foot, that will never recover, and he'll have that problem for the rest of his life, regardless of whether he has surgery or not. And I wonder at his age whether he might look at that now and think, mm,
I've done enough.
what's my quality of life going to be after the game? And if I was his surgeon, I'd be having a discussion about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh gosh. Okay, When it comes to the end of the season, I mean, obviously we will go through and look at which contracts are not renewed and who perhaps even who declines in Steve Cook's case, if you're right. Um, I have to say, I still feel he's fantastic with his
Yeah.
anti. He really, really is. But I appreciate what you're saying. It's a bit like the conversation we're having about Frey up front, you know. Frey knows what to do. It's just a question of getting the body moving quick enough. Okay, so Coley, he picked up a training ground injury, and there's all this talk about him coming back, and he's in training and whatever, but we've yet to see him on the subs bench. Hopefully, we will towards the end of this month, or maybe in the start of April. And he's offering an alternative to Frey and Lloyd. Is Ryan and his style of play missed, Matt?
Yeah, certain games definitely, especially when we need a goal last 20 minutes or so. I felt like we miss his energy up front. I feel at times we lack a little bit of pace up top. And when he was playing, I thought he was so bright and he is probably the best finisher at the club in my opinion as well. Um, and he can only get better. It took quite long for him to extend his contract. I don't know what was going behind the scenes with his family and such, but yeah, once that got sorted, I think everyone was pretty excited that we had a talent there. And if we can get going again next season, um, January comes along, and then next summer, we'll see how much we can get for him, and he should be a good prospect for us next season.
Yeah, I think you're probably very much right there with that. I think Joe, from what you've said before, you agree as well that he is one for the future.
Yeah, I also think the next season's a massive one for him, simply
Yeah.
because Algeria have a African Cup of Nations in December, and then you've got the World Cup in the summer. So if Ryan Colley can get off to a really good start, because if you look at Algeria's team, they've got lots of number 10s and lots of wide players that want to drift into the centre of the pitch. Don't really have anyone that wants to stay in the centre as a centre forward. If he can do that at championship level, he will get looked at, he will get called up for Algeria. And if he goes to the AFCON or if he goes to the World Cup, his value goes from there to there,
Mhm.
and that is a game changer for us. So for me, he like at least for the next 12 months, every emphasis has to be on getting him fit, getting him in the team, and getting him scoring goals because he's the next one that we've got to look at for market. And yeah, as a player, I think he's very good. I think his touch is very good. He presses well. Positionally, he needs a little bit of schooling, but again, he's a young lad, so when you're coming into senior football, the role of the centre forward is different to what it is at any other level, regardless of the tactics you play, because simply it's more of an aggressive game. But yeah, all hopes on him for next season. And again, he's another one like Clark Salter. If his injury is niggly and is at risk that it could break down again, there's not a point in risking him because you need him to have a good recovery time and have a full preseason behind him. If he gets that, then we could be onto a lucrative deal come 2026. Because simply as well, because of his age, Saudi Arabia is always an option because Saudi Arabia's rules mean that they can add an additional under 21 player. At the minute he qualifies for that, you can get a good sizable amount of money there for a player like him.
Well, maybe the Saudis will take a share of the club. Who knows? All right. Okay. On to a quick peek ahead, if I may. After the international break finally ends, we finished the 2024-2025 season by playing, first of all, Stoke, then Cardiff, Oxford, Bristol City, Preston North End, who we've mentioned before, Swansea, Burnley, and finally Sunderland on the last day. Um, I'm guessing that you would regard the last two games, Burnley at home and then Sunderland away, as the most difficult, Joe. But would you regard the rest as winnable?
On paper, I would say they're the most difficult at this point in time.
Right.
By the 26th of August, Burnley's fate could already be decided. Particularly if they're looking at that we're going to be a playoff team, then how seriously they're going to take the last two games of the season, and Sunderland as well. I think Sunderland's fate is pretty much sealed already, so I don't think there's going to be that significant a drop off for them to drop out, and equally they're not going to get in the automatic places. So those two could be more winnable than we think, in the same way that Leeds and Coventry were proved winnable last season.
Yeah.
Um, the games that we've got, you're looking at the home games really. The Preston North End one again. If Preston are a barometer, that's a must win. Cardiff is a must win. I know Preston's away, but Preston would be a must win. Swansea, you would think, is a must win, because I don't think Swansea City are a very good football team, not like they were in years gone by. Bristol City will be an interesting one because they're on a
Mm,
bit of a high, but I watched them against Norwich the other day, and I actually thought for most of the game Norwich were the better team. Just Bristol City scored at very good moments in the game.
yeah.
So they're an interesting one because they're going to be pushing. They still have 3 or 4 games left until the end of the season. But yeah, they are winnable fixtures. And like I said, the last two could equally be winnable. It's, win your home games, you'll be fine.
Yeah, Matt, I've got to say the same to you, and I think I want to point out that the first two that we're playing are in the relegation fight already, Stoke and Cardiff. So, do you think that'll make a difference?
Yeah, I think to most fans, especially the first two games when we come back from the international break, those will be seen as must wins. Um, I think it is QPR. Most of the fan base are worried that we could get dragged in. 7 points is not much of a gap, but you never know with QPR. We lose a couple more games that we could get dragged in. All of a sudden the teams down the bottom are starting to win games, grow a bit of confidence. But yeah, the first two are pretty big. So just get those 6 points, get to 50 points. That normally is the target for us to stay up. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the last couple of games, especially Burnley and Sunderland. Again, they could be a position where the season's basically over for them. They can just use players they haven't used much of the season. Sunderland, if they've got a playoff place secured, especially, they could rest some of their players and they can just be a dead rubber at the end of the season. So, yeah, they'll look hard on paper when it comes to Burnley and Sunderland, but they could be winnable at the time. So, but yeah, these games coming up, the first two and four with Oxford in there as well, roundabouts where we are. Those are definitely winnable and probably crucial. Just to make sure we're 100% safe.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I mean, I think the one thing we need to say is that our destiny is in our own hands,
Yeah.
and at this stage,
Yeah,
if things go wrong, I really probably we should take the club out and shoot it, for being a wounded animal because it's just crazy. We should be okay. There will be fights for against relegation. There will be fights at the other end to get into the playoff positions or perhaps even into an automatic qualification. But generally, I think we're in a very good position. We just need to worry about injuries and suspensions. That's really the big worry we've got at the moment because we don't have that great depth of quality. Um, let's move on to something else now. Talking about relegation fights. Matt, do you have any idea now who you think will be relegated?
uh, Plymouth looked from their performance on Saturday, and that loss against Derby, which was a 6 pointer. Really, I think, I think they are down now. I thought when they beat Liverpool in the FA Cup and they were getting a few wins at home, I thought they were really building something there under the new manager. But I think, yeah, recently they've been getting too many losses in a row, and I think they're down. Derby is interesting. They're starting to pick up a couple of wins now under John Eustace. I've always liked John Eustace as a coach, especially when he was with us as assistant manager. I see them staying up. Oxford could get dragged in. They were relatively safe at one point, but results at home haven't been solid, especially away from home as well. There's still 4 or 5 teams there that could get dragged in. Even Portsmouth at one point thought they were safe a few weeks ago. Now they've had a couple of losses as well. So it's very hard to call, but Plymouth is a sort of a certainty for me. Now there's a bit of a gap. But yeah, it's championship is that's such of a crazy league. I can't really call the other two.
You know what? I sympathise with you on that one. What do you think, Joe?
I actually think Plymouth and Luton will go. Um, because I think at this point, 4 points is still a lot to make up for Luton, particularly with a worse goal difference as well. I would second the point on Oxford. I've just had a look at Oxford's fixtures between now and the end of the
Mm,
season. and they've got 4 home games left, and they are Sheffield United, QPR, Leeds, and Sunderland.
Really?
Looking at that, and you're thinking, oh, okay.
They're
So
waiting for us. That's definitely.
QPR is a must win for them because their away
Yeah,
game are Middlesbrough, Sheffield Wednesday, Cardiff, and then Swansea. But then I looked at Stokes, and Stokes is pretty generous until the last 3 games of the season, where they're away at Leeds, at home to Sheffield United, and then they've got Derby away on the last day. So I'm looking at them as well and thinking they're a bit suspect because you would have thought Mark Robbins would have got a bounce, but he's not really. They've kind of just plateaued and
so,
stagnated, and they've circled the drain as well for a few years. And you always worry about a team that do that.
yeah,
I mean, part of me would like, and I say this as I've got a man that I used to know a long time ago who's a staunch Hull City fan, but for any club that goes and gets rid of a manager like Liam Rossini, the same way that Birmingham did the other year with Eustace, you know, Hull have got rid of Rossini and plummeted, and I do think Hull maybe were in a false position last year because they had a lot of loan players. But even so, I wouldn't be crying if Hull City was to be the third team in the bottom 3. But then I would probably say the same about Cardiff.
Yeah, coming back to Plymouth, Morgan Whittaker, was a great asset for them, and he hasn't clicked since he's been sold. And Plymouth have not managed to recover in any shape or form since he's gone either. Plus, also the spell where we had Rooney in charge that didn't help either. So they look certain to go back down again, I think. Then that leaves us with two more, and Cardiff is the one that I really feel will be going down. But then I agree with you two that the toss up for the for the third one, it could be Derby, although I still think Eustace is doing a great job. It could be Luton, who've fallen off the cliff almost, really, and it could still be Stoke, despite all the money that the Bet 3665 have given them. They could equally go. It really is up in the air. I think this probably not so much the next couple of weeks, but the next 4 matches are going to be absolutely crucial for these sides. Really are going to be.
Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah,
God. Who would be a manager who knows? God, dear.
I think the one thing Hull have got going for them, and I would say Derby probably as well. You look at the goal differences. Hull are -8,
Yes. Yeah.
Derby are -11, Stoke are 14, Cardiff are 20, and Luton are 26. So if I'm Hull City, I'm thinking, well, maybe I've got one more point than the other teams have, but I'd still be worried if I was them as well.
I don't want to
yeah.
start.
I probably agree with. I
Go
agree
on.
with Joe with Luton. I think all season they've just lacked consistently. You've had the odd one in there, but they've been really poor all season. And
I think
you often see teams that go down from the Premier League and then don't adjust to the Championship, and they can go to League One. So I just think with their form they've been all season, it could just catch them out.
I think 2 things with Luton have gone under the radar as well. The first is the sale of Ogbeni. Og
Mm.
His pace down the right hand side gave them a different dimension, and along with Andros Townsend, when Luton's 3-5-2 wasn't working, they had wide players that they could bring into the game and change their formation a bit. And they've lacked, particularly for the first half of the season, they lacked being able to do that. So when the 3-5-2 didn't work, that was them finished. They were done for the game. And also they've changed a lot of their back line. Like Mark McGuinness is an average championship player. They lost Gabriel Osho on a free transfer. There was discussions about whether Tida Mengi was going to leave as well. He ultimately stayed, but that's caused a bit of disruption to their defensive line. And obviously with Tom Lockyer, the problems that he's had. I don't think if they'd gone into the season with a back three of Osho, Lockyer, and Mengi, I think they probably would have finished about mid-table. But instead, they've ended up recruiting, bang average championship players and have really struggled.
Yeah, I think there is the sniff of desperation at Luton now, and I honestly feel that that in itself may be enough to push them down. Because when you get that desperate, you start playing badly.
Mm.
Um, all right, so our time is now well and truly up for this Rangers roundup. Hoops and Dreams will be reviewing the season as a whole after the Sunderland game. But until then, you have the preview shows for you to watch. I also hope to get to chat to someone from the first team soon. So watch out for those. And I'll end up by thanking my guests, as ever, Matt and Joe. Thank you very much for your efforts. Editor James, who doesn't get enough mentions, and all of you for watching. If you're watching this on a YouTube channel, please do click on subscribe and also perhaps post a comment below. This has been a Hoops and Dreams QPR podcast. Come on, you R's.